Here we go.
Well done. Yeah, the conduct is absolutely everything because it determines how they behave back with you.
Yeah, it's evidence.
Yes. Yep.
I think that view is really helpful
Yeah.
once you start seeing that all the interaction, the way it's structured, is collecting evidence.
Yes. Yep.
So because they need to back up their logic with something, and
Yeah.
that logic is backed up
Yeah.
through um, um, what your words or conduct implies.
Hmm.
If you then try to sort of mold it into the narrative,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they need that. So so that's why everything is, and that's why they always go for spoken words
Hmm.
and conduct, because uh, it's harder to spot and it's harder to defend.
Yeah.
So that's why the written word is easier to defend.
Mm, definitely. Before we head down that track, if I just do the quick introduction and then we can head
Mhm.
off, because otherwise I'm going to have to piece this together, and I'd rather just do it as a kind of flow of a conversation, if that's all right.
Yes,
Cool. All right. In that case, am I right to call you Sui?
yes.
Cool. All right. Sui, thank you so much for taking time out of your life and your day to join me on today's discussion. I am so excited to have this and actually be able to put it out to people based on the numerous discussions you and I have more recently had.
Yes, it's this is gonna be fun. It's I've watched or listened and watched your uh, productions, and I really like your style. So
Thank you.
it's fun to explore this topic with you.
Yeah. Well, it's been fascinating looking at the information that you've been putting out, and I thought it would be useful because we want to talk a lot about rights today, and just give people a big kind of broad framework of things. And one of the things you suggested was looking at the Thomas Paine quotations. Maybe we could start with that.
Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
um,
Oh,
it's just a yeah. Sorry,
I was
were you
going to
saying
say, well, we
something?
can start wherever you'd like to start. I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, perhaps the question was sort of um, or let me ask you this.
Hmm.
What is how do you describe this topic?
Oh, okay.
because because it's not that straightforward to.
No, it's not. I
to
think what we're looking at here is shining some light into the obfuscation and the misdirection of words in order to control a narrative and control the people within that narrative, and
Mm,
really just start to unpack and expose that, so that things like assumptions, if you don't even know what assumptions you should be looking at, you don't know where to go. If you don't know what your rights are, you don't know what to do. If you don't know how language is manipulated. So those are kind of the things to start to unpack, but it's an enormous subject and we can only touch on some of it today.
yeah, yeah. That the subject is interesting because it's at its core it's very simple,
Hmm.
but it's everywhere, and then people have so many different angles to this,
Yeah.
and there are people who are experts in specific areas, and they say that they know how this stuff works.
Hmm.
But they don't necessarily look at it then from all these different perspectives and see um, what sort of connects all of these different threads or
Yeah.
angles to this. So, but the way I describe this, um, I like to talk about rights
Hmm.
because that's sort of, you can talk about origin of man or um, sort of describe it like that, but at the end of the day, when you talk about interaction with other people and especially interaction with government officials,
Hmm.
or Regency officials. We'll come to that. Um, we it tends to be about your rights and their perception of those rights.
Mhm.
And one of the ways to think about it for me has the very helpful way has been to try and keep two tracks parallel in my mind,
Mhm.
basically all the time. There's the stuff that actually exists and actually happens,
Yep.
which you can call it the truth. Because if you think about, um, I've described it like this, that the only thing that actually happens, which call it the truth, is what happens without anyone doing anything. So
Mhm.
basically, what happens naturally.
Mhm.
So trees grow, grass grows, flowers bloom, wind
Mhm.
blows, all
Mhm.
that stuff. Animals roam around,
Mhm.
right? Nobody's doing anything. And also whatever someone does
Yeah.
physically. So those things, that's the actual reality.
Mhm.
And then um, alongside that, you have people's perceptions or conceptions or ideas of what actually is happening
Mhm.
or what happened previously.
Mhm.
Um, and that latter part is actually only an assumption. It's a narrative if you want, but it's
Mhm.
something that can be implied by some information that is available for
Mhm.
people to look at. And now you have two completely different things actually. You have what, because the truth is always there's only something that actually happened.
Mhm.
And obviously this links directly to the topic of rights and courts and justice, because the courts are the tribunal of truth.
Mhm.
That's the purpose of the court. So you're trying to figure out from the available evidence what is the actual truth, what actually happened, who did what,
Mhm.
or was this something that happened, outside of anyone's control? You know,
Yep.
any event, something
Mhm.
happened. And then, but all most of the discussion these days is around, the documents and forms and da da da, and statements and you know whatever,
Mhm.
um, which then creates the picture that is then being discussed. And it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be in courts, but it's the same thing. Even outside of the judicial system, when
Mhm.
you look at anything, you can have a written description of something happening,
Mhm.
but it's never accurate. It's never actually the reality. It's just somebody's perception and attempt to describe what actually happened.
Mhm.
And those two are not really compatible because um, the written description or the oral description of the attempt to describe the reality and truth is always limited because
Mhm.
language is limited.
Mhm.
You fall into problems of definitions of words, the exact meaning of words, the granularity of the information you
Yeah.
can put out there, and all these questions. So,
Yeah.
uh, as a starter, that's sort of how I like to think about this. So the actual reality is very tangible. It's somebody pushing their perception or their presumption of your rights to you. They
Mhm.
come in and they start making assumptions. They want evidence, and they take that evidence in order to define um, or in order to justify their behavior towards
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
So if you look at it that way, it's really important stuff. It's very
Yes.
concrete and very
Yeah.
tangible stuff.
Mhm.
So um, so that's sort of where uh, I try and lay it out like that, and then of course you find all kinds of material about this.
Mm.
And Thomas Paine, you mentioned, he's a lot of people talk about the rights and sovereignty, and how the sovereignty is vested in the people, and all these terms and phrases that are thrown out there,
Mhm.
but very few people actually take it deep enough um, and think about it. What does it? How how can these concepts exist in reality?
Mhm.
So what Thomas Paine very clearly states in a number of his works is that uh, government is logically and um, um, by definition it is a creation of by by men. So
Mhm.
so no government existed before men,
Yeah.
or men and women.
Mhm.
So basically, uh, it's a creation of people. So a government as an institution or structure, as a legal structure, it cannot have any inherent rights. It has to get those rights from someone, from some real people,
Mhm.
actual living, thinking, acting
Mhm.
people who decide that now we are going to grant these types of powers to this type of entity
Mhm.
in order to, whatever their aim is.
Yeah. By the way, as subtle as that sounds, that is hugely important.
Yeah. And interestingly, when you try and find lectures and conversations and analyses and writings about this topic,
Mhm.
that particular topic, it's very hard to find. People don't like to talk about it.
I
They
wonder
just
why.
assume that somehow you have a bunch of people who have some rights that they got from somewhere, but not really from anybody.
Yeah.
And that's a totally wrong assumption. It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
So those rights and those powers, let's put it this way, those powers that those people claim to have and then exercise towards people, they have to have come from somewhere, some people. And the question is who? Because the famous maxim of law is that one cannot give something that one doesn't have.
Mhm.
So if people are supposedly giving that power, then it means that they have it.
Yep.
Um, um, and then basically you get into very quickly there you get into um, the art of defining words and terms of art, where the government officials would say that yeah, but those rights only exist and they are sort of vested in the people as whole, and they never defined what does it mean, what does that term of art mean,
Mhm.
people as whole.
Could you define term of art for me, please?
uh, well, just that there's you can I can pull out some um, let's just check Merriam's here. But it's basically as just throwing it out there. It's whenever you have um, a certain profession or expert area, some
Mm-hmm.
topic. In those areas, you would need to describe something using specific terms.
Mm-hmm.
And those terms, then within that profession, they have a specific meaning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So
So,
you could be
so
using the same words that people would be speaking, but in reference to that particular topic or object, they could have very different meanings.
that's it. So it can
Right.
be exactly the same word,
Yeah.
letter by letter, written exactly the same,
Yeah.
but it the author who uses that term of
Mm-hmm.
art is the only one, or who uses that word is the only one who knows in which specific meaning they're using it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the slippery slope starts,
Mm-hmm.
because the reader or someone who's having a conversation with someone doesn't know whether the words spoken or written are terms of art or ordinary words.
Mm-hmm. So it's a form of sub-language then, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Right.
this is something that I've had the government Department of Languages confirmed in writing to me.
Mm-hmm.
They say that that's how it works. You have terms of art, and because I asked them, how do I know, um, what's the meaning if somebody says something on TV, or if some ministry posts some um, announcement or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and they said the author has to clarify that, because
Mm-hmm.
it's the only way it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know that that happens, if you don't go in and question that, then
Mm-hmm.
you just let it slide. And they can
Yeah.
basically interpret then your conduct and your words in that context.
Yeah.
So imagine you combine to that the well-known freedom to contract, like in law,
Mm-hmm.
that everybody has, the right to contract freely.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know you're being presented a contract,
Yeah.
and then you reply something, and then what you reply indicates that you're accepting that contract,
Yeah.
it's a valid contract.
Absolutely. It's an interesting thing, isn't
So
it? Because you have to have the definitions, but from that Wigmore quote, you also, and things you said, you need to know specifically what to not assume or presume that it means.
yeah, well, the Wigmore quote, do you are you going to have it available somewhere, or should we sort of
I
read it
well,
out?
we let's put it out now, but I'll put it in the show notes as well. It's going to take me a little while to put all this together, I think, with the information because I want to
Mm.
make it. I want to give people a proper, solid foundation of thinking and structures, so that they don't wander off. Or I mean, they will wander off where they want to go anyway, but they've got this kind of solid footing of this is actually how the structures work, and then you can start to build a detail on that.
Yeah. Okay, so I have it here.
Hmm.
There's two parts to it, but this is what you find from Wigmore's evidence. It's a Chudbourne publication from 1981, or this specific citation is from that. So Wigmore's evidence, point 2462. Um, the ordinary standard or plain meaning is simply the meaning of the people who did not write the document. The fallacy consists in assuming that there is or even can be some one real or absolute meaning. In truth, there can be only some person's meaning, and that person whose meaning the law is seeking is the writer of the document. So that's pure logic,
Hmm.
but that's a rule of evidence
Hmm.
which people don't realize,
Hmm.
is that if you have somebody saying something or writing something or giving a statement, the words they use, the meaning of those words can be only defined by them.
Yeah.
And if there is a risk for misinterpretation, they should clarify that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very powerful thing to realize when you use any language,
Mm-hmm.
because it works exactly the same way, of course, in different languages.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with, English or Finnish or Swedish or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
French. So, um, and it also says that that's what the law is seeking. So what is the law seeking? It's seeking the truth. What are you actually trying to suggest here?
Mm-hmm.
So and that suggestion leads to um, another hugely important topic in law, which is intention.
Mm-hmm.
What is your intention when you use those specific terms? Are you trying to pull me into a contract or
Mm-hmm.
not? Or are you just trying to describe something that happened?
That's a very potent question.
So intention is huge in whatever, whenever you're dealing with law.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, it's something that in criminal law you have to be able to show or prove. Um, it's the mindset, the intent,
Yeah.
uh, the mens
But
rea.
your conduct and your behavior will also demonstrate your intent as well, won't it?
Well, not necessarily, because the conduct can be taken to imply that,
Mm-hmm.
but that's an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
So mm, there's this classic example that we talk on your backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and you say that, you know, I need, I would need somebody to paint my house, and then um, you say something like, yeah, I can, like I would, I would pay 100 quid,
Mm-hmm.
for somebody to paint this or whatever. And then the next day, I show up with the paint and paint brushes, and I just in the morning start painting the house.
Mm.
Um, that conduct actually created the contract, a valid
Mm-hmm.
contract. So,
Mm-hmm.
so one party makes an offer, and another party starts actually executing it
Mm-hmm.
without any formal agreement, even.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or agreement in the form that people would usually think about it, like written or like handshake, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Handshake probably is one of those
Yeah.
actions that used to have that meaning very very
Yeah.
specifically. But anyways, if you start then delivering on that, then that conduct implies that the offer has been accepted, and now
Mm-hmm.
it's a valid contract.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can paint the house, and you owe me 100
Mm-hmm.
bucks, quid, whatever. So but you can take that into, I tried to use that example a few years ago when people were recommending to put on some uh, masquerade equipment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and start playing the live action role play.
Yeah.
um Nowhere did I see any at least when I was looking at that those early recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
The recommendations were offers,
Yes.
and then you know the enforcement of that contract starts after the acceptance.
Yep.
So once you do something that implies that you have accepted that offer, then that offer or that contract that was created can be then enforced.
Yes.
And that's a bit of a problem, because of course most of the people did not realize that that happened.
Mm-hmm.
neither did they ask or see it like that.
No.
But again, there's someone who is creating basically a sequence of events that are then verifiable facts that can be taken and interpreted as evidence of a contract existing,
Hmm.
and sort of to explain the behavior, and then also to explain the fact that somebody's enforcing that contract, whatever
Yeah.
it was, with a, you know, by force, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all justification drawn from actions that happened without proper consent. But the evidence still exists,
Hmm.
and the evidence can still be used as a justification for those enforcement measures.
Yep.
That's the problem here. So now we're starting to see that, okay, well, we can talk about simple things like that, and perhaps they were not so simple for everybody, but
Hmm.
um, some people had pretty horrible consequences from that. Um,
Yes.
but the same mechanism applies to everything,
Yeah.
absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And the problem is always that you have someone jumping in with assumed or presumed um, authority
Hmm.
and starting to push something to
Hmm.
you, and then they take your reactions, your words, as an indication of your consent,
Hmm.
where in fact, you would then have to prove that you did not have that intention
Yeah.
to contract.
Mm.
Um, that's the usual way the game is played.
Hmm.
Um, but then again, the big topic is really taking a step back and saying, okay, well, where did that assumed authority or ability to do that actually come from?
Hmm.
And pretty quickly you get into the question of identity,
Mm.
which is which is a very specific um, element of how this works.
Yeah. Well, it's a very critical element because it's what facilitates it, isn't it?
Yeah, and with that word or term, you have to start again in Merriam's.
Mhm.
So just take identity. So what does it say? Sameness.
Mm.
Hmm. Sameness in all that constitutes the objective reality of a thing. So so I don't know. Do we want to go? Do we want to go in that? Um, just to cover that topic a little bit, because you're
Yeah.
always asked to identify as.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you're asked for your name, your date of birth, aren't you?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
Uh, uh, why? Why is that always the first question? Why are all the forms um, designed so that you have to first identify yourself or identify who is filling the form? Um, which basically, if you identify as, it suggests a specific capacity, doesn't it?
It does.
So same as what? Sameness
Mm.
with what? Okay. Well, how do you actually do it? In reality, you would flash an ID card
Hmm.
or QR code if you talk about digital identity.
Hmm.
Um, so did you create that? document. And document can be, I use document in the sense that it can be also that digital identity, database entry.
Mm.
But essentially, it's exactly the same thing, because if you
Mm-hmm.
have a plastic piece of, that has some name on it, and um, some unidentified government official created it,
Mm-hmm.
um, it all traces back to the population register.
Yeah. Well,
And
he who creates
and
owns. So if they've created it, it's not yours, is it?
there's that, absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Um, and then the question is that, well, if it's somebody else's creation,
Mm-hmm.
what do I know about this? What do I know about the capacity that I am identifying as, or that I'm assuming the sameness with?
Mm-hmm.
So immediately we come back to the question of rights.
Yeah.
Am I redefining my capacity by identifying as?
Mm.
Probably.
Yeah.
So why is that always the magic word first?
Yep.
Who are you? Show me ID. Why
Yep.
is it always start like that? And then after that, things start happening.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting when you dig into that topic, you can dig into the question of um, paperless people and how
Mm-hmm.
they are treated by
Mm.
the government authorities.
Yeah.
Or, let's take paperless migrants or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different set of rules. You
Yeah.
will eventually find papers where it's stated clearly that the rights are actually stronger,
Mm-hmm.
and the law, the protection of the law is better
Mm.
for people who don't identify as.
Yeah.
Um, um, because they, you don't have that grip. You just have some guy coming there, and where do you start from
Mm-hmm.
if you have that situation? It's like a, Memento, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like that. You have somebody, you have some guy showing up and starting a conversation with a government official, and let's say he genuinely does not know, has no IDs, nothing, or born identity,
Mm-hmm.
which of course the whole word, or the title of the film is very funny because it's born
Yes.
identity.
Yep.
So the guy is there, and I'm here. Um, I have all these different papers, passports, whatever. I don't know. Uh, you know, how do I know who am I actually?
Mm-hmm.
It's I really like that movie, but it falls short on the reflection. You know,
Yeah.
he's he's obviously a smart guy,
Mm.
but he should spend some time thinking about it.
Mm.
How can I prove it? He's
Yeah.
just grabbing the passports and flashes them around and
Yep.
assumes that one of them has to be him,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, what does that prove? He doesn't know who created those.
Yep.
It just has his photo of his face on it,
Yep.
all these different names and date of births. So what? The photo means nothing. They're
Yep.
obviously genuine, right? So they're created by a real government official
Mm-hmm.
based on a database entry in a population register, right? So it's a movie, but it makes the point clearly that,
Yes.
look, all of those would come from some, and there are tons of people all over the world who have different um, ID entries in different government databases,
Mm-hmm.
different passports, multiple passports or citizenships, or at least they have them at their disposal to identify as them if they want to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And some of those identities might have special privileges or special immunities or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. and then depending on which card you flash, you either get beaten up or not. Right?
It's about right.
Yes. What the hell is happening here? Isn't that a big question?
Yeah.
Don't you want to know specifically why that happens?
Hmm.
um, everybody should be asking that question. What the hell is this?
That's one thing that really struck me with you is the questions you ask. They're such powerful, well thought out questions, and they have no wiggle room except to reveal the truth, either with answers or with the lack of answers that you get.
Yeah, you have to. It's it's difficult because in order to ask those questions, you you have to accept the reality
Yes.
as it is.
Hmm.
Because if you give any credibility to those documents, if you assume you know what they mean, you
Yeah.
already lost it.
Yep.
You That means that you don't know the truth, and
Hmm.
that is conduct that can be taken as evidence.
Absolutely. That
Right?
is one of the most critical things I've found on my journey is conduct. And it was only because you mentioned it and I started to really think about it. I thought, absolutely, that is one of the key things.
Yeah. Um, so let me put in another topic that supports that.
Hmm.
In international law, if you do something as a sovereign act, you have to specifically do it in that capacity. Otherwise, it's not a sovereign act.
Hmm.
And it means that if you're trying to um, express your capacity by doing something, you have to do it in the correct capacity.
Mm.
And if it's a delicate question, then wrong conduct can imply something that is not consistent with the capacity that you're trying to express.
Hmm.
So you have to be you have you have to you have to pay attention to that. And of course, provocation is all about that.
Mm.
All these different ways to provoke people and mislead them. It's all about that. Because again, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get you to imply something about your capacity
Yeah.
or lack of capacity, rather.
Hmm.
And then when you give that evidence, or they try to grab that evidence and say that we deem this to be something
Mm.
or mean
That's a word
something.
we should cover it well at some point is deem.
Yeah, I can take it. Well, we can read that as well. um
Mhm.
I have it here. So but anyways, again, what are they looking for? The evidence that they can use to justify their actions, because you don't seem to have a capacity that would give you any uh, standing.
Mhm.
um so but what are they actually doing? What is the process? Still, if the question is still open there, and if you know how to pin the question to the capacity, then you can bring the question back to, well, show me your proof, right?
Yeah, where's your evidence?
Where's your evidence for that's yeah, I I do see that somebody can assume things about me,
Yeah.
but how do you back it up?
Yep.
These are these just assertions? Do you have any tangible evidence,
Mm.
or is it just interpretation of words?
Yeah.
um so this one, the word deem,
Mm.
it's everywhere. It's being used. It's the favorite word of government officials. They just deem shit. They just deem this and that, whatever they want.
Yep.
um, and this, unfortunately, this website went down, or at least I can't. So I'm using the Wayback Machine version of this Duhame's Law Dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
So deem is, the definition is to accept a document or an event as conclusive of a certain status in the absence of evidence or facts which would normally be required to prove that status. Okay, so you have some evidence or some events, meaning conduct,
Mm-hmm.
and you take those and you interpret them, you deem them as indicating a status,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have any facts
Yeah.
or other proof.
Yeah. So
So
it's basically,
basically,
go on.
mm, yeah, go ahead.
I was going
I
to
think
say, so basically what they're saying is we have no evidence to support this, but if you don't question it, then it is.
yes. Uh, 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 or you can think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at this from the perspective of courts again. The tribunal of truth.
Mm-hmm.
People go there and they need to present evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So the court would have to decide based on the evidence available, right? They can't do anything. They can't start bringing in the evidence.
Nope.
So if the only evidence is being brought in is something that indicates something, or that can be interpreted as indicating something, and there is no contradictory evidence or other facts
Yeah.
presented to rebut
Mm-hmm.
um, that assumption, then the only evidence available is actually going to lead to um, what the deem word means. It's that you know it's not true, but you still have no evidence, and you have to take the evidence available. So and there's even a better one on the same page. There's like a bunch of different definitions, but there's a couple of citations from cases, from case law, where this specific term has been discussed. And I just love this first one. It's RV Norfolk County, 1891 case. So this is a citation from the judge um, in the judgment. So when you talk of a thing being deemed to be something, you do not mean to say that it is that which it is to be deemed to be. It is rather an admission that it is not what it is to be deemed to be. And that, notwithstanding, it is not that particular thing. Nevertheless, it is to be deemed to be that thing. So this is taking a step further and saying that, yeah, we have this evidence, but we admit that we don't know the truth. Actually, we admit that we know that it's not the truth because this is just an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
But because there is no other evidence, we're just gonna have to take it as the closest to the truth, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
quite empowering, isn't it, when you understand what's being done, because you can start to pick it apart.
yeah, you have to do this. This is how it's done.
Yeah.
This is exactly how it's done. So I like to think of it as it's all about evidence.
Mm.
And if you don't rebut it, or guess if you do you think your lawyer is going to rebut that
Nope.
if you hire one? the, the problem is that they might be bound by their own association rules
Yep.
not to do that.
Yep.
So, or do they even realize that? I know a lot of them who don't, you know. So, so who's going to do it? Who's going to bring up the evidence? Even if it's just saying that, even if it's nothing more than asking the question of how do you define those words and what do those words even mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you deeming something, can we agree that that's just an assumption?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have evidence.
Yeah.
And if they present evidence, then can you pick it apart?
Yeah.
Do, can you take that evidence that they have access to or they have produced and one by one rebut it?
Mm.
So you have to see what kind of evidence they would have. So, and one of the, of course, since we're on the topic of courts and reading citations from cases here, what is the first presumption? What is the first thing they deem in a court case? Usually, the identity. Somebody's summoned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who? Who summoned?
Their fictional creation.
Yeah, that government created identity.
Yeah. And if you turn up
Okay.
with it, then that's you're confirming with your behavior that you're identifying as that.
Yeah. So but can you see where that first
Yeah.
presumption is how does it arise?
Yeah.
Where
Definitely.
where, where does it trace back to?
You have to go back up the line from there.
Correct. So if it's that name, then what is this? Oh, it's the population record entry.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that
Okay.
why they always have a copy of of the birth certificate in the
Yeah,
court?
so that's just a printout from it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it has exactly the same info as um, an extract from population register. It's
Yeah.
basically that.
Yeah.
It's just called certificate. Um, but then the question is, well, how was that created, and what does it actually indicate? What is the? I like to ask, what's the intended purpose of it? What's your intention with this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're not being very clear here. If you dig into that one, so the intention with how that type of um, a process can be abused against somebody, that's pretty serious.
Mm.
So there's a million things how to take these steps and turn them around and say, look, okay, so where do we start? Let's go from the beginning. You have this name, which indicates this identity. It has some identity number even.
Mm-hmm.
Who gave the number? Who created that? And then the crucial questions become, what was the background documentation that created that identity?
Mm-hmm.
So there are terms for these types of documents. They're called breeder documents. So what are those documents? Because you can't have government officials just creating identities in a database out of, just invent this stuff. So they got
Mm-hmm.
some information from someone. Now, who did they get the information from? And what information did they get?
Yep.
Because obviously that entry as it's being used is suggesting something about my status and my
Mm-hmm.
rights.
Yep.
So, which evidence did you use when you created it if you claim that it shows my status? Okay, I want to know specifically how you derive your assumption of my status from that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can dig into the documents, but you will find is usually papers from the hospital and the church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and an interesting discovery is that um, the paper, the actual notification that creates the population register entry, which is typically sent by the church. Um, the question with that document, the first question is, by what authority can they send that document? It is signed by them.
Mm-hmm.
It is filled by them. Where did they get the information to begin with? And by what authority can they send that document in?
Mm-hmm.
So aren't they the creator then?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the church the creator of that person then? Because they
Yes.
notified it.
Yeah.
Uh, the documents, you look at the documents and they're signed by them. They're not signed by the parents. They're witnessed by the godparents, but they're
Mm.
signed by the church. Okay, so they created that. Um, doesn't it get a little bit more complicated? Should they be invited to clarify that?
Yes. Definitely.
What was your intention when you did that?
That's right. Yeah.
By what authority? Or where did you, how did you assume that authority? That
Yeah.
you're even able to send that kind of a paper in?
Yeah. I suspect you're not
That
going to get some good answers to that question when you ask them.
yeah, I don't know. Somebody who doesn't want to answer knows what the intention was probably. Um,
I guess that's the higher up in the chain you go as you start to get closer to the ones who do know. They go quieter and quieter with their answers.
yeah, absolutely, and that's why I've been saying it all along that it's actually the people in the organizations that are being hoodwinked,
Mm-hmm.
not us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people who think they are doing the right thing and they're doing a good job. You know, most of the people want to do a good job and
Yeah.
they do what they're told to do.
Yep.
And they would, they wouldn't start questioning things because they have bad experiences of where that leads. Yeah,
Yep. Definitely. Nicely
people
put.
want to be nice to each other
Yes.
and they want to do a good job,
Yep.
especially people in the organizations like that, like
Yeah.
church and state officials and
Mm-hmm.
they're probably decent people, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that they have no idea what they're doing.
Yes.
And, they are made or told to answer these questions. And I have a lot of those answers in writing, and they say, I don't know. I don't know. I never thought about it. And then I would just suggest that, well, take it up in your hierarchy, or
Mm.
I can forward it to your superiors or
Mm.
directors or whatever.
Mm.
And then when you do that, of course, the silence starts at some point.
Yeah.
But the silence doesn't mean anything. So silence in law, the only thing it creates is adverse inference, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it raises a question mark. Why are you not answering?
Mm-hmm.
And then that can be used then to imply something.
Yeah.
So when you start seeing how these things work, you can start using them the other way around.
Which is the way
So
they
like,
should be
okay, so
used.
your silence is suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or is it negligence?
Uh,
Right?
mm.
Which one is it? So there are lots of tools that lead to the fact that when I'm trying to give this another spin. So every time somebody talks about some dispute and how to solve a dispute, 95% of the material um, and suggestions would be to get a lawyer or to attempt to negotiate, attempt some kind of alternative dispute resolution,
Mhm.
and as a last option, if not everything else fails, you should consider courts.
Mm.
But then when you read about the courts, it's always like pros and cons, and it's very expensive, and it's hard and mentally tough and all this. However, the court is the only place where you have the duty to try and dig out the truth. And it's
Mm.
also the only place where everyone should be offered a fair chance to present
Mhm.
their case.
Yeah.
All these other stuff is trying to keep you away from it,
Yeah.
because these other stuff is not trying to find the truth. They are trying to find an agreement.
Yep. Isn't that interesting?
So I think what one of the biggest problems we have these days is that the courts are being portrayed as something that they're actually not.
Hmm.
The courts are bound by the purpose of it, and the fairness is, it's you have these overriding principles in the courts.
Hmm.
Of course, you can have bad people and they can abuse that. They can, just do outright wrong decisions or even illegal decisions.
Yeah.
But um, but then you just have to escalate it and appeal it.
Hmm.
So um, so what I'm saying is that one question that sort of crystallized a while ago is that why is that done? Why is why are people so afraid of the courts? It's like it's a thing, right? Being
Oh yeah.
threatened by courts.
Yeah.
It's a thing. I'm gonna, you know, do this and that. It's a threat. It's a form of threat. Why? Aren't you supposed to try and find the truth there and present
Hmm.
evidence?
Hmm.
So isn't it a service? Isn't that like one of the best public services?
Hmm.
If
Well,
you think about it.
what changed my relationship in terms of my feeling about the court, because I had that, was when I lived in Manchester, I used to go and sit in the courts and just watch
Mm,
the structure and the ritual and the behavior to
mm.
familiarize myself with it. And it became very revealing after I'd done that probably for about 15, 20 hours over the space of a few weeks, that my whole view on the thing changed. But you could only do that as an observer rather than someone who's on a heightened sense of alert and in there because they have to be there or they feel obligated to be there.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Hmm.
Um, the ritual, however, is not the purpose of the court.
No, it's just part of it.
They just they just do that. Um, and again, one of the things to realize in terms of evidence is that oral evidence in court is the most powerful evidence usually that exists.
Mm.
Direct oral
Yeah.
um, statements in court.
Hmm.
Um, they would basically it's one of the strongest possible. Again, why? Ask why. Why would oral evidence in court override basically um, written evidence that is being submitted?
Go on.
Well, because the written evidence is just, you think about the two tracks here that
Hmm.
we started with.
Yeah.
You have written evidence, which is words implying something, trying to paint a picture of something. And
Hmm.
then you have, on the other hand, you have someone actually there
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking, telling, saying
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
acting in a in a
Hmm.
in a capacity.
Hmm.
um, and if you talk about identity, of course, the identity question is really funny, because this is a question I asked many times, that how could anyone else have better evidence of my identity than me?
Yes.
Um, so I don't know who created any of those papers. Maybe you can answer if you want to, or you can stay silent. But but that certainly does not prove anything about me.
No.
I was even this. I've I've told it a few times. I had this ridiculous interaction in an embassy where I was signing a paper, and the official uh, was on the other side of the table, said to me after I signed the paper that that's not your signature.
Okay.
So what can you even say to that?
Not
I said,
quite.
are you insane, or on drugs, or what the hell is this? I just wrote it, and that it's you know there's beautiful case law, and law book citations on the signature question. The
Mm.
signature is whatever the one signing decides it to be. It
Yep.
can be anything.
Yeah.
Um, it can read something completely different.
Hmm.
The word can be something completely different.
Yeah.
It's whatever, or it can be unreadable, of course, just a
Hmm.
marking or whatever, scratch on the paper.
Hmm.
But if the intention is the one that defines what is a signature,
Hmm.
and they don't know that. That guy didn't know that.
No. I bet he did when you
Um,
finished talking to him.
yeah, it's well, I don't know, but we're dealing with people like that, and we are physically um, in an environment where that happens.
Yeah.
And most of these people, you cannot make them see these problems there and then.
Hmm.
And if you try too hard, it probably agitates them and escalates the situation
Hmm.
towards something that you don't want to experience,
Yeah.
because of the wrong assumptions, basically.
Hmm.
But when you keep in mind that it's all about the evidence, you just have to point out the problems and say that, look, let's get this thing sorted out before we get any more crazy here,
Quite.
right?
Hmm.
Because none of us would want to be acting on wrong assumptions. It's devastating to them as well, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you point out the error of their assumptions, don't they have a liability or a duty to investigate?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another maxim.
Yeah.
If they don't, if they're in a position to prevent something fraudulent from happening, they should do it. Otherwise, they would be assuming that liability themselves.
Mm.
So there are all these mechanisms and uh, ways to hold these people accountable. They are
Mm.
actually the ones who should be held accountable, because
Yep.
they are administering these sorts of things.
Hmm.
Um, but but um, you, you have to see how it works before you know how to use those mechanisms for your advantage. And the biggest realization is that most of what they try and make you do is taking you away from that um, those areas of the system that benefit you.
Hmm.
I shouldn't probably use the word benefit, but that are there to guarantee your rights.
Yes.
So the system is built like that. And then they are the ones who have problem uh, making the distinction between the reality and the fiction.
Hmm.
That's their problem.
Mm. Yeah.
Whose claim is it,
It's
right?
theirs. It's always their claim.
Yes, unfortunately, people are schooled pretty intensively to sort of assume the liability from them
Yeah.
by by jumping in those fictional shoes
Hmm.
immediately, uh, without even having a normal. Why can't we have a normal conversation about that? Like, isn't this quite a big topic? Can we just sit down, like, the population register director? Can you explain what are you doing here? And why is the population register under the supervision of the Ministry of Finance?
That's very telling.
Yeah. Well, telling of what? To explain me, right? I have
Hmm.
my I have my ideas about that, and perhaps some evidence also. But but what about you? Well, what's your intention with this? Why did you,
Yeah.
you know?
Why have you created that structure that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it like isn't it like something that is also a duty of an official to be able to explain what they do and why? How do
Yeah.
they back up their assumed authority?
Hmm.
Where does it where is it derived from?
Hmm.
Instead of immediately jumping into crazy behavior and silence and accusations and
Yeah.
you know if not something worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's when you step back and you take a nice, level, calm view of it all, it starts to reveal itself.
Yes, they have no evidence.
No.
They can't because
No.
all of the paperwork is creating a story which is not something that happens naturally.
Hmm.
That's the problem. They
Yes.
have to pull you into that narrative and that paper story, that literary art creation,
Mm.
right? Um, and for you to forego or give up the reality.
Yeah.
And with that, they're trying to get you to give up those rights that you actually cannot get rid of.
Hmm.
You can't get rid of them. You
No.
can delegate them
Hmm.
if you do it knowingly, intentionally, and typically for a specific purpose.
Hmm. But that also
Uh,
suggests that you can claim them back in the future.
oh, absolutely, anytime, of course.
Hmm.
Don't lose them.
No.
You can't lose them.
No, they're yours.
So it's like a power of attorney that you can revoke because you just don't like the guy anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
That also makes me think about the definitions of de facto and de jure.
Yeah, that's a good one, but you have to look at it in Black's Law, first edition.
Hmm.
The other ones are a bit less clear.
They've
Um,
been gently modified.
yeah, um, and it's in those. I don't have the page here, but you'll find it because it's under the term government.
Hmm.
Um, sort of a subheading under that where they define de jure and de facto.
Hmm.
But de facto is well, let me see if I can pull it up here because I love that. I love that. Just give me a moment.
Hmm.
No, I'm getting this because I'm searching it from the server, and this is like I'm getting this. So did you know there's um, a term called adhocracy?
No.
It's a Merriam as well. Temporary organization or committee set up to accomplish a specific task. A system of government utilizing such organizations. So temporary organization set up to accomplish specific
That sounds
task.
like a regency.
Adhocracy. Yeah, Regency is huge because that's actually the way that Regency is the only way um, they can try and justify uh, the delegation of authority.
Mm.
And Regency, of course, means basically a temporary government
Hmm.
administrations, which is in office during the absence of a sovereign.
Hmm.
But if the sovereignty is vested in the people, then it's a bit of a problematic situation because they need some evidence that there are no sovereigns to claim that authority.
Conduct.
Yeah, and population register, right?
Yep.
And that's a ridiculous conversation I had with the Ministry of Finance. Is that they say that the delegation happens in voting, but the voting is done in the capacity of a citizen, and citizens do not have the sovereignty vested in them. People have.
Hmm.
So if they are collecting votes that are casted by the citizens, what's the effect?
But isn't
Other
that? It's
than,
just a distraction.
uh, well, people just go in and basically the one effect I can see from that is that people are specifically stating that they are foregoing that capacity,
Yeah.
right? They don't
Hmm.
want to exercise
No.
those rights.
Hmm.
So isn't that completely aligned with the way the Regency works?
Yeah.
So then they say, oh, we have a bunch of incapacitated, you know, uh, people here who are not mentally present to exercise their rights. So we better just try and take care of this situation for the time being, right? That's Regency.
Yes.
You can read history books about it.
Mm.
That's how Regency works.
Hmm.
Even
Which,
when the sovereign is traveling,
yeah.
just happens to be busy with other stuff
Hmm.
other than uh, minding minding the government business. So um, Isn't it funny? So so
Yeah.
so what's the evidence? So the question was to the parliament. The question was, um, what evidence do you have? Like, do you have some document that evidences that delegation
Hmm.
of authority to the parliament from the people? And they said no, we don't have. Okay. Yeah,
That's
yeah, we
another
don't have
dean
we
then.
don't have such document. Okay. Well, um, what I suspect they did was a bit of a trick because they said they don't have the document, but uh,
Well, they're implying someone does.
yeah. So who would have that document? Because it would have to specifically show some evidence about an incapacity,
Mm.
and then it would have to be recorded somewhere.
Hmm.
You see where this is going?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't remember handing in that kind of paperwork. So somebody else would have to have created that paperwork and
Hmm.
send it in to imply an incapacity, which is
Hmm.
then lead, leading to a situation where they can deem, it's like implied delegation of authority,
Yes.
which is Regency.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that paperwork and where did it come from? Because it would have to be very specific. It would have to rebut something that I naturally own and
Yeah.
have.
Hmm.
Well, I know only one paper that does that. It's the certificate of live birth
Mm.
because there's the material omission.
Mm.
It does not describe people as whole. It describes people as part of a whole.
Mm.
And it's self-evident when you look at the paper. And so there's your definition of people as whole.
Hmm.
Does it actually describe all the physical entirety? If it doesn't, it's not true.
Oh God.
Yes, exactly. That's how it's done.
And it's defining something with a different creation date as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's defining something that did not exist before the birthday. Well, that's another problem
Hmm.
because obviously, they're a bit too late to the game. And then, another legal maxim would back that up nicely, which is first in time and superior in rights.
Mm.
So was that creation here before I was?
Or subsequent to.
Yeah, but how does it even, what does it have to even do with me to
Yeah.
begin with?
Yep.
It looks like pretty negligent, you know, bookkeeping to me.
Yeah. Are your records actually in order?
Yeah. So I said, can I do a, a third party audit of this process? Just the whole process, the chain of custody, right?
Mm.
Because something would have to move from the hospital to the church and then
Hmm.
to the population register. So I want to know exactly what information or what objects perhaps move,
Hmm.
what kind of evidence is passed And evidence of what is passed between these departments. Just to check that your assumptions are right.
Yeah.
Because to me they seem to be totally BS.
Mm.
They can't be right.
Yeah.
They don't make any sense. Absolutely not.
No. No.
Yeah, because it's um, there's private and personal information, right? So whose personal information is being protected here?
Yeah.
If you're claiming that that paperwork is about me, so why can't I
Yeah.
know what was done to create it?
Yeah. That sounds like a
So
data
you
protection
don't want
thing.
to reveal something about me? Is that it? What do
Yeah.
you know about me that I don't?
Yeah.
Right.
This
It's
ground's
it's
getting
so
very sticky for
ridiculous.
them.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Once you start asking good questions, it just falls apart. But the good part again is that there are venues where to basically trickle these questions to,
Hmm.
and clearly there are so many small details and nuances in this system that it's obviously um, by design.
Well, there's one thing you mentioned in a previous discussion that you and I had that we didn't record, was that you've observed the similar structures in numerous different languages and cultures and countries that
Oh yeah,
suggest there is intelligent design behind the entire thing.
yeah, totally.
Mm.
You look at it's the one of the most revealing um tools to you know basically a research tool is the European Union official term bank. It's online,
Mm. Yeah.
and you can just punch in some administrative terms of art um, there, and you can just compare those terms. They're coded. They have coded the database so that they have like a number for each term, so that
Hmm.
they can link directly which term in which language is exactly the same term. So
Hmm.
basically, like you have one word in Finnish and one word in Swedish and one word in Polish, whatever,
Hmm.
and you would have the same number code for all of them, so that you
Mm.
know specifically that this term corresponds to this,
How
and all those
revealing.
crucial terms are there.
Yeah. And I think this
Uh,
is one of the important things for people to realize as well that are listening to this, that this is not some hypothetical or theoretical discussion. It's factually based and backed up by all the documents and research that you and other people have been doing over the years in order to figure out what's going on.
yeah, yeah, that's well said. There's a wait a minute. Uh, I'll give you one of my favorite terms from that database. There's a term called displacing of a newborn child. And the definition of it is to allot to a woman a child which she did not bear, whether the fraud was committed by herself or by a third party, or whether the displaced child and or the mother concerned are only fictitious persons.
What?
Yeah, you want me to read it again?
Please.
Displacing of a newborn child. This is from the official EU term bank.
Hmm.
To allot to a woman a child which she did not bear, whether the fraud was committed by herself or by a third party, or whether the displaced child and or the mother concerned are only fictitious persons.
I can see why that's one of your favorites.
Yeah. So
Oh, I'm almost lost for
where do
words,
I
and that doesn't
start?
happen often. Yeah.
Who do I write to? Mm. But you have terms like that. So like who, where, how, why is this an official term? How often is this in play?
Hmm.
And see, it's displacing of a newborn child, which implies that if I see somewhere somebody talking about a newborn child,
Mm-hmm.
so this is describing the act. But if the child can be a fictitious person, how do I know that? How do I know that a child on any paper implies an actual living child?
Mm-hmm.
Or because according to this, it can imply a fictitious person. So they talk about a newborn child,
Mm-hmm.
newborn fictitious child,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
What's the birthday of this fictitious child?
And who's identifying as it?
Yeah, can you describe how the delivery process happened?
Yeah. Is there any material
Yeah,
evidence?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
I've got to ponder that
amazing.
one. Mm.
It's worth looking into. It's
Yeah.
funny, and you can find this. It's the same, that term is in English, but you have the translations to other languages
Mm-hmm.
also. Same
And
term, same number. It's
so here's
amazing.
and there's plenty like that, and the question has to be ringing in my mind and hopefully other people's minds too. Why?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it has to be compatible.
Yeah.
It has to be compatible. Why is there like endless amount of UN publications about how to, guarantee citizenship and for everybody and all that?
Mm.
That's what they have departments and billions of budgets in trying to make sure that everybody has a citizenship or
Mm.
everybody gets a citizenship.
Mm.
And then when you read those papers, what actually happens is they say it's an alteration of status.
It's
They
all
say
right
it
in
in
front
their
of
own
people
papers.
when you piece it together.
Yeah, it just took a hell of a long time to
Yeah.
find all this stuff because it's all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do is like have the material handy and lead the um, kind of flat, show the path like in that sense that when you find these documents that are written by them about their own structures and systems, and you can see how they describe exactly how the problem is created actually.
Mm-hmm.
um, it gets pretty powerful because you can always refer back to those documents.
Yeah. Their documents.
It's their documents, and by the way, all this is their claim.
Yes.
So now we're coming back to, okay, what evidence do you have then when somebody starts deeming shit
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah.
Well, you have to have that evidence, or you don't actually need it, because
Mm.
if you are clear-minded enough to see the difference between, you know, biological reality and a literary artwork,
Mm-hmm.
then you can argue it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have these citations, they say that they follow their own rule books and
Mm-hmm.
terms and definitions,
Yeah.
then at least you can ask, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
actually pin down to the intention a bit more
Yeah.
effectively, and ask like, why do you why did you draft this document like this?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to accomplish here?
Mm-hmm. You've given
And
me a great.
what does normally happen when, if you discover a fraud like that and you confront the people? What's the normal reaction?
They would normally deny it.
Maybe silence.
Hmm.
But if you start showing more and more proof,
Yeah.
maybe they get a little bit agitated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Start claiming shit that doesn't happen
Hmm.
or didn't happen,
Yeah.
just throwing out assertions,
Yeah.
right? Oh,
Hmm.
really?
Is that the best you got?
Yeah,
I'd hoped for more.
exactly. It's pretty lame when you can see that they really can't answer those questions. That
I,
it,
I,
it becomes laughable. It's like, okay, dude, you are in a position that I don't know, all of your relatives and friends think you're like, demigod, authority figure, all that power, all that, but you can't answer these simple questions.
yeah.
Amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's hugely encouraging as well because it makes you realize just how flimsy the grip on this is. Yet it has the appearance of being all powerful, like the all powerful Oz behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. But it's
Yeah,
just,
that's
it's
it.
flimsy and it's primarily based on ignorance and misdirection.
Yeah, that's a good one, and of course it's a great what that whole story is about that.
Yes.
Unfortunately, not described in enough detail for more people to actually see how that's going on all the time. But another good one is Man Behind the Iron Mask, right?
Mm. Yep.
And who is that guy? The king.
Hmm.
He was actually the real king,
Hmm.
right?
The sovereign.
Hmm. But they had to block that mask on him so that nobody could verify the identity and his status,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? It's all about that. It's just, when you start seeing it, it's ridiculous.
Hmm.
And of course, they rely on the fact that the ones who are shown the path you know, get on the bandwagon and, on the gravy train.
Hmm. It's definitely
And
a gravy
why?
train, which is why it's under the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, but think about that trade-off. What the hell is that?
Hmm.
Why? Is that a good trade-off? When you realize what you're trading off? Or do you even? I think
Yeah.
that's the most stupid trade-off ever,
Yeah. It is
isn't
when
it?
you look at when you realize what it is.
Yeah, I think the problem is that people don't know. They haven't thought hard and long enough about what does the capacity mean?
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
implications of that? The mental image you have is that's created by someone else also of what
Yeah.
it means.
Hmm.
But when you realize that it's all about your rights and status, and then it through that defines other people's
Mm.
um, rights also.
Hmm.
Um, what can be more powerful than that? What do you want? Like, what do you want, a bigger car, or what the hell is it? Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
insane?
It is. It's madness,
It's
and
it's total madness.
it shows how easy it's been to keep people, reined in and so close to the truth, but not seeing it for what it is.
Yeah, is many people, many like pieces have to click somehow,
Yes.
and it takes time. because
Mm.
it's so unbelievable. Um, I like to think about it also in terms of it's hard to blame people because
Mm-hmm.
you have um, a mechanism to, your brains are trying to absorb information and
Yeah.
then process it and
Mm-hmm.
create knowledge out of that,
Yeah.
right? The problem is if the input is not there,
Mm-hmm.
if the input is uh, limited to only certain areas or
Yeah.
predefined for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not suggesting that people's brains necessarily work like that, as straightforward as that.
Mm-hmm.
But but even with that simplification, if you don't have the input, it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't compute. You can't see it.
No.
You can't see the implications. It doesn't resonate in any way because
Mm-hmm.
you just it's just not part of the equation, and that's the problem. It's huge. It's yeah, and it's in many topics, of course, but um, it requires something like the ability to take a step back and question: is the data that I'm using for my analysis of any topic, is the data actually good?
I
Is
missed
it?
all of that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm saying that is the data actually is it a good sample of data for me to process? Can I arrive into this? Can I arrive into the right conclusion with this data?
Just once.
Sorry, are you still there? Is it cutting off? I don't hear what you're saying if you're saying something. Interesting. Typical. Um, so, well, maybe I'll write on the chat. Okay.
Hello.
Now I can hear you.
Good. I
Finally.
missed. I missed the last 3 minutes. That was weird. It just went really quiet.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just when it gets exciting, right?
You know what's funny? I've had that happen several times in the last couple of years. I'm like, how really strange has it gone quiet just then?
Yeah, yeah.
Of
Just a coincidence.
course it is. Yeah. So I'm not sure you were talking about implications of acting in your capacity. That's when I kind of lost it.
Mm, well, I was rambling about the problem that you can't really blame a lot of people
Yes.
because they don't accept the fact that they don't have the information
No.
to actually um, that information to be part of their decision making,
Yeah.
and they don't accept the fact that there is even some information that is relevant to
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So they cannot arrive into the right conclusion because they don't have that the data. The
Mm-hmm.
input is skewed. You
Mm.
see,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot arrive to this conclusion if you don't have that
No.
data. The the,
No.
the, the input of the model, um, of the reasoning, it just doesn't. And that leads to all kinds of big topics of why it
Yes.
is so important um, to have a, like, you know as good a grip on the access to information as possible.
Yes.
it just makes it really, really relevant topic once you see what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of numb the whole system by lack of access to the information. Everybody's going to say, well, we're just doing what we're told, and I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what else can I do? So you need to start dragging people on this journey
Mm-hmm.
for anything to
Well,
sort of have a
yeah, I
mm,
think the thing is that it doesn't really take a large number of people. If a number of people started putting the same questions or similar questions in their own words in requests in to
mm,
various officials, that will start something that they can no longer ignore.
yeah. I totally think that's one very powerful thing.
Yeah,
They can ignore these questions as much as they want, and they have, but
yeah,
it doesn't change the fact that they are silent. They haven't
yeah,
answered them.
yeah,
I have the evidence they don't. So,
yeah,
s- and then, if 10 people do it, maybe they can still stay silent.
yeah.
100,000, maybe 1,000
Mm,
people, somebody starts internally asking that, hey, maybe somebody should now sit down and just fucking
yeah,
answer the question, you know?
yeah,
It's probably way before 1,000 that when that happens.
yeah. But I can see it happening
It's
because
it,
there are,
and then it's all panic and distraction, of course, when that starts happening.
yes,
Why? Because the stakes are
stakes are
because
huge.
yeah, but think about it from the perspective of the Regency. I think that's the best way to look
Mm,
at what's on the table, because it does not exist if the sovereign is present.
mm,
It, and if and then that the acts are actually without authority. They, they, are,
mm,
they don't have any justification or legal backing.
yeah.
It's a pretty big problem.
Do you think?
Yeah. So yeah, you can ignore it, but it doesn't change the fact.
No.
So the question becomes, how long can you ignore it? Right? And
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do about it. There's
yeah,
absolutely nothing you can do about it
yeah,
because it's all based on paperwork
yeah.
and not reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have thousands of opportunities every day to walk down that audit trail or that chain of custody
Mm-hmm.
every day. And which is basically the the justification for all of that
Yeah,
nonsense would just vanish.
yeah.
And so, but let's look at the positive side of it, which is that the system, the administrative system, is still there, and it
Mm,
can still stay there.
mm.
The only thing that is changing is the assumptions and the attitude that the assumptions create,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
If you suddenly redefine um, the status that all of these guys derive from the register that they use,
Yeah.
it automatically redefines the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the, the public service becomes a meaningful service.
That's absolutely right. That's one of the things I've pointed out for years to these guys is you seem to have forgotten that you are a servant and you do not give the orders.
Yeah, yeah. So the system can work exactly the same. Of course, there's a whole lot of useless stuff because
Mm,
you know the system is trying to scoop up all the possible benefits that
mm.
they can claim
Yeah.
claim to take and then channel them to whoever they want to.
Yeah.
But um, when you redefine the status, then the the challenges of keeping your roads safe and
Hmm.
pavements smooth is still there. Somebody
Hmm.
has to do it, right? It does. That's the biggest joke, that people immediately, it's actually the defenders of the system who immediately jump into the conclusion that everything would be chaos and anarchy, and
Hmm.
you know but
But
why?
isn't
it
that just
never happens like that.
no? And
you know
that's
be,
just a desperate attempt, isn't it, to keep the
yeah.
status quo?
Oh, totally, totally. So they want to paint the picture, the dangerous, but don't go there, right? But
Yeah,
everyone would agree,
yeah.
except the ones who are now sort of taking unjustified um, benefits from this craziness.
A veritable power grab, as it were.
It's not. It's
Mm.
fraud.
Well, it is fraud, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because there is no power. It's not a legitimate power.
No.
It's an assumption.
And they have a problem when you point out the potential of a fraud or the actual fraud because they have to investigate it.
Yeah, they have to, or if they don't, then anybody can, as it has been done, right?
Mhm.
What did you
Yep.
call this investigation? I would,
Yeah.
yeah. So people can do private investigation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. We were kind of all over the place. I think, are we
Well,
close
there's a couple of
to
things. Yeah, I think
wrapping?
for this
Mm,
episode, I think that was absolutely fantastic, and thank you. I would suggest that people might find it useful to go to a web page I'll create for this and put in the show notes, so you can have a listen more to you, like discussions with Kurt Callenbach and some of Kurt's work as well. Your
mm,
discussions on Crow 777 radio, which have been very enlightening. I'll put links to EU term banks. And, I'd like to, I'm away this week, but when I get it edited, probably next week, then maybe we can set another date to dive a little deeper into the creation of that, the person through the birth certificates. That's interesting anyway.
yeah, sure. So there's so many ways to
Hmm.
look at this, and happy to do that. Um, that just as a teaser or word of caution or whatever,
Hmm.
is that it's hard to talk about those documents if people have not seen them
Yes.
for themselves. But
Yep.
once you have those documents, and once you've seen how the people who have those documents react when you start asking for copies of them,
Hmm.
that's when it gets really interesting. Because
Hmm.
you're like, what? Why are you so? Why are you all over the place? Because I'm asking papers that you say are about me.
Hmm.
It was one of the first, and I'm sorry to say it, but these the church officials were the worst in that.
Hmm.
They were lying, shouting, trying to just deceive every way possible. And then
Hmm.
at the end, oh yeah, that document. Okay, yeah, okay. And then, where did you get this information from?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who signed this? I don't know. Then, once they had to give it, then they just shut down, like, completely. We're not going to answer any more questions about anything now that you actually see the document, because they were already halfway, down the path of just not being able to explain that document. They
That's must be
actually
quite.
rebutted themselves before they even sent the document to me,
It must be
because
quite
they,
revealing to some of the people who are being asked the questions too, if they can't find an answer, because some will have to be saying, "Well, why not? Why can't I find the answer to this?"
yeah, that's why I said that. I think those people really, some of them genuinely tried to answer those questions,
Yes.
and it's hard to get mad at them
Yeah.
because I could feel that they really tried. Some of them were really arrogant and,
Yeah.
obnoxious and, just dismissive and all that baggage.
Yeah.
Um, but some of them were really trying to answer the questions and helping. They were digging, asking, calling other people,
Hmm.
forwarding some conversations they've had,
Hmm.
by email with each other.
Yeah.
And so they tried. Um, yeah. So, but that's if people get those documents, it's really a different path.
Yeah.
Um, and probably the best way to get it is to just go backwards. So basically, if you have if somebody sent you any government created ID, then you can just take that as the starting point and
Hmm.
just go wherever whoever is the issuer and ask, what information did you use to create this? Where did you get the info? That
Hmm.
will lead to the population register. Then you ask them, how did you create this entry? Based on
Hmm.
what information? So basically you ask for the breeder documents.
Hmm.
And then that leads to the um, most likely the church and the hospital.
Hmm.
And then you take those documents and you start looking at them and spending time just thinking about what is actually written on them.
Hmm.
And even when I tried to ask who drafted those documents, like who designed those templates, like who decided which terms are they using on those template
Hmm.
forms, no answers. Nobody knows. How can you use, it's illegal. They say it on them that this is a legal document,
Yeah. But
but
how can
nobody knows what the words mean.
yeah, how dangerous is that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you doing? Like, this is that alone is a ridiculous
Yeah.
situation that
Yeah.
you are forcing people to fill contracts or legal documents and you don't even know what they mean or who created them.
Oh gosh, that's bizarre.
Yeah. So when you get, and I think that the documents is part of it, but the
Yeah.
process of the interaction is part of the a very important part of this also, because then you get to experience what it's like. um, you get to experience that they actually don't have the answers that you assume they have.
Yes.
That's the basic assumption. You're like, somebody did this for a reason, because the classic millions of peoples would have to be in on this,
Hmm.
right? But they're not, because they don't know.
Yep.
They're just doing what they're told.
Yes.
um, so so then when you get that interaction and that frustration, it helps you to dig deeper.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sweet,
Yeah.
that's been absolutely marvelous. Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this discussion, and I'm gonna have
Thank
to make
you.
a load of notes for
This
myself
was
from
fun.
it.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. I'll probably chuck this somewhere. I use some platforms to
Sure. Well,
put this.
if you send me the raw files across, I'll work on the files I've got as well.
Sure.
Usually, what I do is because there's pauses where there's like you're thinking about the next comment. There's a few stutters and things.
Mm.
I'll take all those out. I've just done it on my latest podcast with a guy, and that took an hour and 15-minute discussion down to 57 minutes. So it took 16 minutes of just spaces and ums and
Yeah.
ahs. It makes the listening time for people much more condensed without changing the meaning or the delivery. And I found that helps because it just saves people time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's like the
Yeah.
usual. If I um, usually when I post these
Yeah.
types of conversations somewhere, I just put them as raw files,
That's fine. That's fine then as well. Yeah.
um, because I'm kind of, we kind of talked about it. I'm like, if somebody really is interested in this,
Yeah.
um,
They'll dig through it.
you don't want to save 15 minutes,
No.
If you short 15 minutes when you do this kind of research,
Yeah, you got problems.
you're not gonna the time we're talking about, the time you need to take is quite a few multiples of that.
Well, I've been looking at this now for probably, how long is it? It's coming up on 20 years.
Yeah.
And, and much like you, there's just been so much study and there's some dead ends and you just keep going. So you're absolutely right. I'll do it for my audience, but yeah, this to me has been such a good conversation, and there's been a couple of jaw droppers for me, particularly when you were talking around some of the definitions
Yeah,
and
those
the
are
displacing of
huge.
a newborn child. I was there going, the fuck have I just heard?
It's amazing term.
Hi,
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun.
thank you. I really
Very
enjoyed it
easy
too.
to talk with you.
Likewise, and once you get across, even if you can't make it further north from it's Oxford, wasn't it? Just let me know, and I'll belt down there, and we can at least look at each other for a little bit and maybe get some food together.
Sure.
That would be
Nice.
awesome.
All right. Well,
All right,
we'll
look,
we'll connect for the next
yes,
episode later.
yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay, I stopped the. Whoops.
Cool.